Nelson Mandela was born in 1918 in a small village called Mvezo in South Africa. He came into a world where your race could decide your school, your home, and even which road you could walk on. His family did not have big houses, cars, or money, but they had something more important: respect, tradition, and a rich culture. From a young age, Mandela listened to elders talk about African chiefs, justice, and courage. Those stories planted a seed in his heart that one day he wanted to help his people live with dignity and freedom. His real riches at that time were not material things, but the values he was learning at home as a child. Mandela lived a simple village life. He herded cattle, played with other children in the open fields, and learned the customs of his Thembu people. When he was 7 years old, he went to school for the first time. There, a teacher gave him the English name Nelson, a common practice in those days. The school was small and basic, with very few resources, but Mandela quickly understood that education was a powerful tool. Even though he walked long distances and faced many difficulties, he held on to the belief that learning could open doors that poverty kept closed. As he grew older, Mandela moved away from his village to study further. He attended the University of Fort Hare, one of the rare places where black students could pursue higher education at that time. For many young Africans, this university was a symbol of hope and opportunity. There he met other students who were thinking seriously about politics, human rights, and the future of their country. Mandela was exposed to new ideas about freedom and equality. However, his time at Fort Hare was not easy. When students organized a protest about unfair rules, he joined them. Because of his stand, he was asked to leave the university. This early sacrifice showed that even as a young man, he was willing to pay a price for his principles. After leaving Fort Hare, Mandela moved to Johannesburg, a busy and unequal city filled with mines, factories, and strict racial separation laws. Here, he saw the reality of injustice very clearly. Black citizens were forced to live in crowded townships, do low-paid jobs, and carry passes just to move around. Mandela took whatever work he could find to survive, but he did not forget his dream. He studied law, often late at night after long working hours. Libraries and books became his silent partners in the struggle. Eventually, through hard work and determination, he qualified as a lawyer, a huge achievement for a black man under that system, with his friend Oliver Tambo. Nelson Mandela opened one of the first black law firms in Johannesburg. The office was small and simple, but for many poor people it was a place of hope. Families came with stories of unfair evictions. Workers came with complaints about low wages and bad treatment. Ordinary people came with fear and confusion about complicated laws. Mandela listened carefully and tried to defend them as best as he could. He saw more and more clearly that the laws were designed to protect a minority and control the majority. The courtroom became another school for him, teaching him how the system of injustice worked from the inside at the same time. Mandela became deeply involved with the African National Congress, ANC, an organization that fought for the rights of black South Africans. In the beginning, the ANC believed strongly in nonviolent protest. They organized marches, petitions, and peaceful demonstrations. Mandela helped plan campaigns where people refused to follow unjust laws, not with anger or weapons, but with courage and discipline. These actions were dangerous because the government reacted with arrests, beatings, and bans. Yet the movement grew stronger, and Mandela's voice became more respected among those who wanted change. As the years passed, the apartheid government introduced even harsher laws. They banned political groups, censored newspapers, and used police power to silence anyone who spoke against them. Mandela and his colleagues faced a difficult question. What do you do when peaceful protest is always met with violence? In 1961, Mandela helped form an armed wing of the ANC known as Umkhonto we Sizwe, meaning Spear of the Nation. Their plan was not to attack people, but to damage symbols of the government, like empty buildings and power stations, to send a clear message. It was a painful decision, but Mandela believed that the struggle for freedom could not remain silent forever. In 1962, Mandela was arrested. He was first charged with leaving the country without permission and encouraging workers to strike. Later, during a famous case known as the Rivonia trial, he and other leaders were accused of sabotage and conspiracy. The punishment could have been death. Instead of begging for his life, Mandela used the courtroom as a stage to explain why he had fought against apartheid. He spoke calmly and bravely about his dream of a democratic and free society, where all people could live together in harmony. At the end of his speech, he said that it was an ideal for which he was prepared to die. These words showed the world the depth of his commitment. The court sentenced Mandela and several of his comrades to life imprisonment. He was taken to Robben Island, a prison on a lonely island off the coast of Cape Town. Life there was extremely hard. The prisoners slept in small cells with thin mats. They were given very simple food and had to do physical labor, like breaking stones in a quarry under the hot sun. They were allowed very few visits or letters from their families. The rules seemed designed to crush their spirits and make them feel forgotten. Yet Mandela refused to let prison destroy him. He chose to treat it as another university of life. On Robben Island, Mandela continued to learn and to lead. Political prisoners discussed books, shared knowledge, and quietly taught one another. They turned their suffering into strength. Mandela studied the guards as well as the prisoners. He treated the guards firmly but respectfully, showing them that he would not be broken, but would also not become hateful. Over time, some guards began to respect him, seeing that he was a man of discipline and dignity. Inside those prison walls, Mandela developed even more patience, self-control, and a deep understanding of people. Outside the prison, the world was changing. Protests against apartheid grew inside South Africa and across the globe. Many young South Africans joined the struggle, and international campaigns called for Mandela's freedom. Posters, songs, and marches in different countries carried one simple message: Free Nelson Mandela. His name became a symbol of resistance and hope, even for people who had never met him. The government tried to keep him out of sight, but his influence only increased. In the 1980s, South Africa faced economic problems, international pressure, and continuing unrest at home. Leaders inside the government slowly realized that apartheid could not last forever. Secret talks began between Mandela and officials. From his prison cell, he discussed the future of the country, insisting that any solution must include equal rights for all, not just small improvements. Even though he had spent so many years in jail, he did not demand revenge. Instead, he spoke about negotiation, peace, and building a new society. On the 11th of February 1990, after 27 years in prison, Nelson Mandela was finally released. The world watched the moment live on television. Walking through the prison gates, hand in hand with his wife Winnie, Mandela raised his fist in a calm, dignified salute. The crowd outside was huge. People were crying, laughing, and singing. A man who had once been locked away as a dangerous criminal now walked free as a hero in the eyes of millions. His face showed both seriousness and a gentle smile. Reflecting the long journey he had traveled, freedom did not mean that the struggle was over. After his release, Mandela faced a country full of fear, anger, and mistrust. Many black South Africans were angry about decades of injustice. Many white South Africans were afraid of what would happen to them in a new system. Instead of taking sides, Mandela worked to build bridges. He spoke of reconciliation, a word that means bringing people together again. He reminded everyone that if they allowed hatred to control the future, the country would never find peace. His leadership style was calm, inclusive, and focused on the long-term good of the nation. In 1994, South Africa held its first fully democratic elections, where people of all races could vote. The lines at the voting stations were incredibly long, stretching for kilometers in some places. Many older people said it was the first time in their lives that they had ever voted. For them, it was not just a political event, but a deeply emotional and spiritual moment. When the results were announced, Nelson Mandela was elected as the first black president of South Africa. The man who had once been a prisoner was now the leader of the country. As president from 1994 to 1999, Mandela focused on healing the wounds of the past and building a strong foundation for the future. A new constitution was created, guaranteeing equal rights for all citizens. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was set up, where victims and offenders from the apartheid years could come forward, share their stories, and, in some cases, receive forgiveness in exchange for telling the truth. It was a difficult process, filled with pain, but it helped the country face its history honestly instead of trying to hide it. Mandela understood that real peace is built not by forgetting the past, but by learning from it. Mandela's leadership was also marked by humility. Unlike many leaders who try to hold on to power, he chose to serve only one term as president. After stepping down, he encouraged younger leaders to take responsibility. He showed that leadership is not about personal glory, but about service. Even in retirement, he continued to support charities, promote education, and speak out for peace and human rights around the world. People affectionately called him Madiba, a clan name that reflected deep respect and love. Nelson Mandela passed away in 2013. At the age of 95, his death was mourned across the globe. But his ideas and example did not die. Schools, streets, and foundations were named after him. More importantly, his life story kept inspiring people to stand up for what is right, to forgive even when it is hard, and to believe that change is possible. He once said that a winner is a dreamer who never gives up. His own journey proved those words true. For your viewers, Mandela's story shows a very powerful meaning of riches. He did not grow up with money or comfort. He spent many of his best years behind bars. Yet today, he is remembered as one of the richest leaders in history in terms of moral courage, his patience, and love for his people. His life teaches us that real success is not measured by cars, houses, or bank accounts, but by the difference you make in the lives of others. When someone feels discouraged or thinks that their background is too weak, Mandela's story can remind them that great things can grow from very small places. With education, discipline, and strong values, even a child from a remote village can become a global symbol of hope. When someone is filled with anger because of injustice, his example shows that forgiveness is not weakness, but a powerful decision that can free both the victim and the oppressor. This is the true story of riches in Nelson Mandela's life, a journey from village boy to prisoner, and from prisoner to president, carried by unshakable principles and a heart full of courage.